Of all the characters in Phantasy Star Online, one of the most recognizable ones is an android named Kireek. He's one of the first NPCs you meet. He joins you in battle and gives you advice on how to navigate the game's combat. To most players, he's a character you meet once or maybe a couple more times throughout the game, but his story is much more interesting than just serving as a tutorial. You see, Kireek is not just a normal hunter. He's a part of a criminal organization on Pioneer 2 named Black Paper, and he serves as their executioner. And within Black Paper, he goes by a much different name, which is his title as the Black Hound. Throughout the story of PSO, you cross paths with this assassin much more than you may initially think. Despite not playing a big part in the main story, he actually does have a character arc and he changes a lot from when we first meet him. So just how much do we learn about the android and what ultimately becomes of him? Let's take a look at the story of Kireek, otherwise known as the Black Hound, and find out. Ideally, this will be the first in a series of videos I'll make about some of the characters in this game. Because of this, I won't be going too in-depth with certain plot lines that Kireek appears in, simply because other characters are more involved in them than he is. It would also make the video very long, trying to explain every detail that will be covered later on. Alright, let's get into it. To start off, we can actually learn quite a bit about Kireek even before we start the game. The Japanese exclusive Material Collection book includes the backgrounds for a lot of the characters, which includes Kireek, so let's see what it has to say about him. While he did board Pioneer 2 as part of Black Paper, Kireek also had a personal goal in mind, following the trail of a hunter on Pioneer 1 named Heathcliff Flowen. It wasn't mere chance that the android was an assassin. He loved to battle and he saw Flowen as a worthy opponent. But in the middle of Pioneer 2's journey to Ragal, they received a totally legitimate report on Flowen's death, and Kireek was left feeling empty with no suitable opponent to test his strength. And if the translation is right here, up until the time we meet him, he was absent-mindedly committing massacres in his secret life as an assassin. Damn. But at some point after Pioneer 2 completes its journey, he takes on a quest from the Hunters Guild, and that is when we first get to meet him ourselves. The task is to rescue a hunter who hasn't returned from conducting research on Ragal, but the client isn't just sending you, he assigns another hunter to work alongside you and asks you to talk to him. And standing in the corner is none other than Kireek himself, but he's not looking forward to working with another hunter, let alone a complete novice. The client insists that 2 hunters are needed here to assist in rescuing and data collection respectfully. Kireek accepts this disrespectfully, and the 2 of you head down to the surface. Despite him having absolutely no interest in working with you, he has enough good in his heart to give you tips throughout the mission. And if you didn't notice at this point, he's a whole 35 levels higher than you, and whatever weapon you have pales in comparison to his scythe. As soon as any enemies get close, you bet he's running off and killing them with one swing. While you're getting your ass kicked trying to learn the controls, here he comes actually getting things done. So Kireek gives you advice on how to attack enemies, open doors, and just survive in general. God help you if you tell him that you're having any trouble in combat, because you are seriously going to test his patience. But eventually, you make it to the hunter, whose name is Ash, and you save both him and the research data. Kireek tells you he'll bring Ash back with him, so you're all clear to deliver the research. The last thing he says to you before heading out is to keep practicing and to become strong enough to impress him one day. And with a laugh, off he goes, and the quest is complete. Canonically, this is the last you hear from Kireek until all the way in episode 2. But to get there, we actually have a few more quests in episode 1 we have to do first, and we soon come to a branching path that determines whether we get his canon or non-canon ending, so let's get into it. So much later down the line, there's a quest to search the underground mines for a scientist's research data. The scientist in question was a famous geneticist named Dr. Osto, who was aboard Pioneer 1 and likely left a copy of his data somewhere in the mines. But you aren't the only hunter snooping around, as it turns out, and you soon come across a man in black armor guarding a doorway. And to make matters worse, he tells you that he has orders to kill anyone who approaches him, so you have no choice but to fight back. Ignoring his advice to go back, you dig deeper into the mine and come across another black-clad hunter named Sue. Instead of attacking you, she recommends the 2 of you work together to achieve your goals easier. So Sue joins your party and off the 2 of you go. She's also here for a job she took on, but she lost sight of her friend while she was down here. You can actually find him deeper in the mines, though he isn't much of a talker. Anyways, you eventually make it to the main computer and the 2 of you download the information you need. Sue tells you that she was looking for the same data and starts to ask who you're working for, but she ends up cutting herself off. Before going off on her own again, Sue asks if you could tell her your name. This might not seem like a big deal, but this choice locks you in on either the canon or non-canon endings for Kireek. So let's go with the non-canon ending first and choose to hide our identity. Sue then heads out and the quest ends like normal. Now that we're in the non-canon timeline, we actually do get to see Kireek in episode 1, but like I said before, none of this is supposed to happen. On another quest where you're searching the caves for a girl, you find out that she's working for Black Paper and you convince her to give it up. And with her running back to Pioneer 2, the quest is over, but if you look at your map, there's still someone else lurking in the caves. That ends up being Kireek, standing by himself in the middle of a room. He's friendly to you when you first approach him, asking if you've gotten stronger since your last meeting. But in the quickest tonal shift ever, he then reveals his title of the Black Hound and tells you his intentions are to kill you, right now. And he means it. After fighting Kireek off long enough, he seems satisfied for the time being. He also indirectly mentions Floen as his Pioneer 1 rival, and with that, he disappears. The second encounter with him is much the same, but the android is in a room that's completely black. Kireek proclaims you to be his new rival, but something is clearly different with his voice and his personality. Defending yourself once more, his mental state is clearly getting worse, and he stumbles off, talking about something being wrong with his head. And finally, the last encounter takes place in the ruins deep below the surface. Various hunters were sent down here to investigate a series of earthquakes that happened, but they all started to get influenced by Dark Falls and were turned violent against each other. One hunter that has been managing to hold out is none other than Ash from your very first quest. You both team up for a period of time as you investigate the source of the earthquakes and you put it to an end. Ash then heads out looking for more survivors, and once again, you could complete the quest here. But going up one level and checking your map, you can find 2 people still on this floor. And what you see when you get there is Kireek looking away from a defeated Ash. Unfortunately, the android could not hold off Dark Falls' influence, and has become fully corrupted. Barely able to let out a threat, the door locks behind you and the 2 of you fight for the last time, and he's become incredibly dangerous. So with you being left no choice but to put him out of his misery, Kireek finally dies by your hand. The only thing left behind after this battle is his weapon, named the Soul Eater. You help Ash, who is still exhausted from the battle, but tells you not to worry about him. And with that, Kireek's story comes to a tragic end. Is what I would say if any of these events were actually canon. Kireek doesn't actually show up for the rest of episode 1, despite lots of people doing this questline for the cool weapon. So let's go back to the right timeline this time and decide to tell Sue our name. It'll be a while before we reunite with the Black Hound, but in the meantime we learn a little bit more about the bigger picture. We also work with another hunter named Bernie to save someone that was lost in the forest. More on that much later. Now that we're back on track, you return to the mine with another scientist looking further into the data you previously acquired. Once again, you can find Sue here looking around, but her tone is a lot less friendly. She tells you not to get too involved with Dr. Osto's findings and that a certain individual named the Black Hound is involved. Sue leaves shortly after, but it turns out that Bernie is in the mines as well and noticed the 2 of you were talking. He shares that Black Paper is a black market organization that sells weapons, android parts, and slaves. As for the Black Hound, it's an android created for the sole purpose of killing. Bernie then gives you a final warning about Sue before departing, in that she is also a member of Black Paper. From here, the questline continues with separate run-ins with Sue and Bernie. These all take place during quests where you interrupt Black Paper's dealings, so it's safe to say at this point you're on their radar. Bernie assumes you haven't met the Black Hound yet by the sheer virtue of you still being alive, so good job. To complete the questline on episode 1, you need to keep pestering Sue about Black Paper, and she's really not happy about it. It's always a good idea to ask black market agents about their work, especially when you told them your name and they're now actively monitoring your movements. But that's it for episode 1. We get a brief introduction to Kireek, learn more about Black Paper, and leave a memorable impact on Sue. But a question that lingers in the air is, if the Black Hound is truly watching us, why didn't he stop us from continuing to intervene in Black Paper business? Moving on to episode 2, the big focus this time is the quest named Seat of the Heart. It's available from the beginning, at least on private servers, but going in without all of the previous interactions in episode 1 actually cuts out quite a bit from the quest. You actually need black paper to be watching you in order to get the full story here. Of course, I didn't know this when I first tried the quest, so I had gone through the entirety of it wondering when Kireek would show up. So the quest starts off simple enough. You're tasked with helping another character named Ellie as she takes a virtual hunter adaptation exam. Ellie is a character that deserves her own video, and there's a lot that happens in this quest, but all you need to know is this. For the exam, the Pioneer 2 lab enlisted the help of 2 certain individuals to supervise it. Not only are they already watching your movements, they need to keep an eye on Ellie and the AI within the system to see how it reacts to her presence. There are some shenanigans that happen during the exam, but in the end, you and Ellie pass, and the system AI named Cal transfers itself to Ellie's datapad. The two of them have a bit of a history, and the AI wants Ellie to sneak into the central control tower. This area is strictly off limits and very dangerous, so there's no way you would get clearance from the government to be here. The 2 members of Black Paper overhear this request, and per the government's orders, they continue to keep an eye on you. Once you fight your way to the tower, things start to get a little haywire with Cal, but Ellie insists on continuing into the tower. You split off from her in order to open the door to get there, and just as the 2 of you are about to enter, Black Paper appears behind her. Sue is the first to speak, saying it's been a while since you last met and kindly requests you to come back up to talk with them. Despite Cal being in an unstable state and the tower being very dangerous, neither you nor Ellie are backing down. You're about to come to blows with Sue when the Black Hound finally speaks up. So for the first time since the forest, Kireek joins you once again at a whopping level 97, and the 2 of you enter the tower. And this is one of the coolest parts in the whole game. You get to fight alongside your somewhat mentor after all this time, and you see the Black Hound in full swing as he laughs maniacally, carving through enemies. I mean, sure, he was built for the purpose of killing, but damn is he cool when he does it. And if you thought he didn't actually have any character growth in this time, if you heal him, he'll actually let out an apology. Now that right there is true humility. So the 2 of you fight your way to the top in an incredible fashion, and Kireek puts down a telepipe for Sue and Ellie. Cal basically returns to digital primordial soup and promises to evolve into a much better AI system in the future. Going into the specifics behind this would take a long time, and we're just here for our favorite android assassin. The overseer of this system then kindly teleports you all out, and you wake up by yourself on the beach. As was the case many times before, you can end the quest right now, but if you look up in the cliffs, you can just barely see a certain someone. So make your way to the hidden warp outside, and you get to meet Sue and Kireek. After she shares her thoughts on Cal and Ellie, Sue tells you that you're now officially off Black Paper's radar, so good for you. She then heads out so you and the Black Hound can have a one-on-one conversation. Despite this being your first face-to-face meeting in a long time, and despite getting on Black Paper's bad side, Kireek still wishes to see you as an equal and asks you to keep getting stronger. If that's not the motivation you need to start grinding, I don't know what is. But that's all we have for episode 2, and even if you were aware of this questline and knew that he showed up, well, we're not quite done yet. Our next run-in with Kireek is a whole 2 years later, in episode 4. The general idea behind this story is that a meteor, totally by coincidence, hits Ragal and it leaves a massive crater on the surface. This meteor ends up containing the same cells that are used for photons and mags, so the military takes a keen interest in recovering it for themselves. Black Paper, meanwhile, being a counter-military organization, explicitly wants this to not happen. It doesn't take a lot of investigation until we see our favorite assassin once again. Rather than talking about what the military is up to, Kireek instead asks how your training has been, noting that you look a lot more experienced compared to 2 years ago. Then, in true mentor fashion, he gives you some battle advice just like he would have back in the forest. Later on, he actually ends up complimenting the way you've been holding out on your own. He doesn't have any interest in slowing you down or warning you not to keep going. So you make your way into the crater and learn that Black Paper is tracking down a kidnapped hunter. The name of this hunter is Rupika, and we very briefly met her in episode 1 when she was lost in the forest. Kireek is hot on the trail of the military and gets face to face with Rupika and her kidnapper, the captain. He tells the man, quote, "I allowed you to be aware of my presence," and goes on to say he has no interest in why Rupika is so special. The Black Hound has his orders and he will carry them out. So with his signature gleeful laughter, he engages the captain in combat and buys enough time for Sue to grab Rupika. Kireek then tells them to count their blessings, and the three of them make their escape. They keep her hidden in one of the caves, and the two Black Paper members have a quick talk before heading out. While Kireek isn't concerned about Rupika's safety, Sue, being a fellow Newman, has made it a personal goal to keep her safe. Kireek also has a brief run-in with a member of the military who actually recognizes the android by his title. They don't end up fighting, but we learn that the military captain's father was prevented from working on the same project that's going on right now, as in, he was silenced by a certain Black Hound. But with Rupika in the picture, development is back in full swing. That said, it's a bit too late for Rupika to want to be saved, as she feels the meteor's energy resonating within herself. She wanders off to return to the meteor, leaving Sue and Kireek trying to find her once again. Kireek starts to notice his companion getting increasingly worried about Rupika's safety and the military using her to create a weapon. Despite him being built for assassination, the android proves to be surprisingly level-headed and tells Sue just to focus on the mission at hand. He also says he's not afraid to go off on his own if she's being a liability, which sounds oddly similar to a certain other time he had to work with a partner. In the end, Kireek manages to get her to refocus, and off they go. However, that ends up being the last we see of him. All that's left at this point is taking down the big boss and saving Rupika. Sue is there to tell her everything will be alright, and by talking to the two of them, episode 4 officially ends. It's a shame we don't get to talk to our somewhat mentor again after saving the day, but at least we know we're on his good side now. So now, after all this, surely that covers everything for Kireek, right? The only thing we haven't covered yet is episode 3, but that takes place a whole 2 decades later. There's no way he's still going to be around. One of the downloadable quests in episode 3 is called Future Bullet. It takes place prior to any of the story in the game, as it's supposed to be a beta test of card technology in a virtual environment. As you're receiving the mission briefing from the client, there's an interruption within the system and someone else starts to chime in. With a laugh, this individual starts mocking the client for sticking around as long as they have. Claiming that the only 2 souls left are the 2 of them, he challenges the client to a battle. Holy shit, man, he is still around. And those question marks, they can't hide anything from us. Very fittingly, Kireek has 6 power, 5 movement, and can instantly kill anything if he just happens to roll a 6. If you've never played episode 3 and don't know what any of that means, these stats are very dangerous, and it's only through mercy alone that he spawns monsters instead of equipping himself with weapons. So defeating the humanoid, either by attacking him or letting him defeat himself, nets you a win and then the quest is finished. But we receive one final message from Kireek before his story officially ends. I have no interest in this planet anymore, in anything. Not you, those remaining here, or even myself. My only regret is that I no longer feel the thirst for battle. Go, inhabit this cursed world, do as you will. And that is the last we see of him. He's gone for good, and his story comes to an end. What I find really fascinating about Kireek is that he's never truly the center of attention beyond when you first meet him, not including the non-canon stuff, of course. It's probably a little weird to hear me skip over a bunch of story because it doesn't directly relate to him, but honestly, that's pretty fitting for Kireek. He has no interest in stopping you from snooping around in the mines, or a malfunctioning AI trying to become human, or the safety of a girl that's being used by the military. All that matters to him is who needs to be protected or who needs to be killed. And after seeing your potential, he grew to respect you as a fighter and had no interest in challenging you like he had Floen. He also serves as a good counter to Sue when they team up, as he helps her stay on track with his mission-focused attitude, though he does occasionally use his authority for his personal benefit. Maybe the reason we don't see him after interrupting Black Paper in episode 1 is he wants to see how much stronger you get instead of treating you like a target. Honestly, this whole thing is by far not a big part of the game, but it's still very cool to see how he changes in each episode. From his absent-minded assassin work, to begrudgingly teaching you the basics, to bending the rules of Black Paper just to see how strong you can become. Outside of everything that we've seen, Kireek also has a few more small appearances here and there. The various official manga that came out would include him either fighting, mentoring, or being referenced as one of the best hunters. The PSO2 card game also included him, and even after all this time, he is still cool as hell. Despite him literally being built for assassination, I can't help but feel bad for the guy in his last message. Clearly the last 20 years of inactivity wore down on him, and his final battle was just an attempt to find some spark of inspiration. Whatever Black Paper or our characters are doing at this point, they're clearly not in the picture anymore, so Kireek was left to slowly lose interest in everything. But in the world of Phantasy Star Online, in a story that is surrounded by death, I guess walking away from it all is far from the worst outcome. You want to know what I think though? Take a look at this artwork celebrating the 3-year anniversary of Blue Burst. There's a cake ready for everyone, but there's only one person that has not one, but 2 forks. Clearly this means Kireek retires from being an assassin and becomes a gourmet, learning to love eating all sorts of